Okay, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Okay, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and a very good afternoon to all of you, ladies and gentlemen. So welcome back to the class. Today we are going to continue our journey on the lesson number 7. But before that, I would like to request your full attention with regard to the exercise for the 6A and 6B. So the 6A and 6B is focusing on making sure that you understand the journey for the analytics, which is macro analytics and statistical SQL, using the DrSAI integration. So we are going to perform this exercise together. Basically, I will simulate it to you so that later on you can try to do it by yourself. And then we have some homework over here, which is the lesson 6B. The AGE class also already been given this task to perform this exercise. And I would like to give you some ideas that this exercise may lead you to some errors that indirectly encourage you to use AI companion to help you to solve. I will give some prompt related to it. So indirectly, I will teach you also how the AI companion can help you to mitigate the item. In the end, you are going to collect your data and put it inside your databases using the award spaces. So this is the example, if I'm not mistaken. Okay, this is my example. So you are going to be performing. Why suddenly this one is not it's not working? I'm not so sure why. But basically, you are going to perform this kind of example, and then after that, you are going to fetch the data. Okay, please wait. I just want to try. Where is the link? Maybe I forgot the appropriate link. Let me just double check with my correct link. Wait. Okay. Okay, this is my link, ladies and gentlemen. So you are going to perform this kind of action. When we click run, then the ETL success data safely stored in MySQL, meaning the data here is already logged. So this one is for the 6B. 6B, I'm going to teach you the way of doing it, and all the code is already being given to you here. But of course, there will be some sort of errors related to it that you need to discover by yourself. So this is not tricky lah, but more on discovering it. But I will giving you the hint maybe tomorrow or the day after tomorrow. All right, so that is the journey for 6B. So let us talk about the journey for the 6A first, which is we are going to recap about the macro analytics. As you know, in the lesson number 6 before, you learned already about the inner join, aliases, and also the outer join. So this one is the basic analytical engine. And this 6A is more on emphasizing about the ETL. ETL stands for extract, transform, and load. What is it for? The extract, transform, and load is basically giving you some ideas related to the data here. So I will perform the creation of data. This is the DDL, data definition language, followed by the statistical analysis for the SQL, where you need to perform the descriptive statistics, and then you need to perform the basic volatility and risk. So this is the example. If I ask you to analyze it by yourself, I possibly assume that majority of you will not perform it. Therefore, let us do it together today before we go into the lesson number 7. All right. So first and foremost, please visit your award spaces, logging into your award space as accordingly. That's what you already performed it in the previous class. And then log into your account. I'm going to use my basic account here. I hope that this is the true account. Otherwise, it is actually on the other, on the other accounts lah. Other email Okay, so far so good Can follow, cannot follow Can follow, press number 1 Can hear my voice, right? Clear Okay, can follow. Right, that's good. Thank you. Thank you for all of you that responds to my inquiry. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, as usual, we are going to play around with the MySQL databases. Just go into the hosting tool over here and then proceed to the MySQL. Yeah. Okay, proceed with the PHP MyAdmin. This is the basic idea about the configuration of the PHP. And you are going to see over here, I got the DOSM state data. Okay, this is the data that I already performed the exercise before with couple of your friends. So today we are going to perform the same thing. So how to go about it? First and foremost, let me delete first this data. So this is the okay, DOSM data. I'm going to click drop. You cannot delete reference by foreign key. Okay, I need to delete first the regional key, the regional key related to it. My bad, Okay, let me redoing it. First and foremost, if you have any regards to this data, you need to delete first before you can delete the original databases because it's a linkable data. So now it's done. All right. So first and foremost, today we are going to recap our advanced laboratory for the topic 6A. Why? Because I do believe the God give me hint that if I encourage you to relearn by yourself or self-learn, majority of you will not perform it. Therefore, please allow me to help you understand this journey. So today we are going to understand about the ETL, extract, transform, and load, and also perform some little bit statistical function and also macroeconomic strategy. First and foremost, as you know in our previous class, we already talked about aliases, inner join, outer join, that focus on the statistical internal data that you have beside the other configurations for the basic ideas in your topic number 6. We learned already about the Pine Valley furniture, which is you learn about the who is actually making sales that not according to the tables, who is actually not performing, and who is actually making the company losses. Yeah. So today we are going to relearn and try to do some exercises which look like similar last week. But now we are going to explore a little bit deeper about the ETL, extract, transform, and load. First and foremost, ladies and gentlemen, I just want to give you some ideas. We can actually perform any data fetching from the external databases. We can also perform data from the external API keys, which is indicated here. Let us begin with the 6A first. First and foremost, you can copy the SQL that already been given to you in this primary view, and then followed by your main table. So this is my main table. After you click into this name, it's going to be listing all the tables that we already performed before. And then we are going to click the SQL over here, the SQL tab, followed by pasting it. Yeah. So this is the idea of how we want to justify where we want to open our stores. Okay. So the example here is we are trying to do some sort of macroeconomic data in terms of the population density, average income, and also employment rates. Why? Based on this particular information, we try to relocate or try to justify where is the best location for us to install or to create our next future stores, PV Pine Valley Furniture stores. So that is the idea with regard to this journey. Okay, let us begin. After you copy and paste and put it inside the SQL like this, and then after you click go, automatically the data are going to be inserted. Remember, this is the two-in-one ideas where you put all the data together. So when you click the DOSM underscore state underscore data that are already being created for you, you can see we got the state name, population millions, average household, and also unemployment rate. Okay, this is a very important idea for you as an MBA student to understand. When we try to perform any analytical discovery, it is good for you to understand also the spatial element and also temporal. Spatial means ruang, spaces or location analytics. We call it lah in other way. And then another one will be the temporal. Temporal means time. That means you are going to explore what kind of indices or matrices that can help you to justify the opening and also the metrics related to your business indices. Yeah. For example, in this idea, we are going to have the population in million and also look into their average household income because we want to justify the new opening of the data. That's why we perform this analysis. Yeah. Let me recap back the idea of this SQL just to give you some idea what is happening before the table is generated. First and foremost, this is the create table. By writing up this kind of command is actually the indicator, or we call it as the commented line. This one is not being analyzed by the SQL syntax. Yeah? All right, and then we perform the create table. As you know, DOSM state underscore data is the name of the table, followed by the name of the variables and also the varchar, or we call it as a variable character, and make sure it is actually a PK. PK stands for primary key. And then we also going to put the state name, population in million, we put it as the decimal degree over there, and average household income and unemployment rate. So by creating the first table, we create the DOSM data state. Second, when you go into the load data macro data, this is the insertion of the information, meaning going to insert first row, second row, third row, and so on and so forth. So if you can see over here, the command is very simple. Insert into your folder or your table name, followed by the values, yeah, which is SGR, Selangor, and this is your population in millions. This is your average household income, and the last one but not least is the employment, employment rates. And then the step number 3 is create the internal PVC regional sales data. PVC is a Pine Valley furniture. So this is the example hypothetically that we are trying to create some branch ID as the primary key, and we give name as the PV underscore regional sales, followed by the state code and yearly revenue. If you can see on the last but not least is where we try to merge the data using the foreign key, where we identify the state code over here as the reference with the DOSM data and indicating as the state code as the foreign key. Meaning, we are going to use the foreign key as the connectable linkages between the branch ID and also the state code lah. Because the state code here is the new character that we created, but this one is identified as foreign key. And last but not least is we insert the data into the PVC regional sales. What is this? This is the data that we insert on the second table. If you look into your table over here, we got, are you sure you want to leave? Okay. So if you look into your tables, you get two important tables here, DOSM state data, and then another table will be PVC, this one, PVC regional sales. This is only an hypothetical manner. And if you look into state code over here, it is actually linkable to our previous code under the table name of the DOSM. Okay, so far so good. Can follow or cannot follow? If can follow, press number 1. Done, basically done, right? Because majority of you just copy and paste it on your award spaces. Yeah. Later on your journey towards the lesson number 7 is quite interesting because we are going to create our questionnaire. Our questionnaire is very good, because it can be deployed using your own subdomain, and you can collect and start to analyze the data automatically and so on and so forth in your journey. All right. So without further delay, let us go back to our discussion. So on our 6A, we are going to run the basic analysis with regard to the descriptive statistics, the baseline. So I'm going to ask you one important question. As a CEO, what is the economy baseline of our country right now? So if you are going to use Excel or SPSS or any statistical package, you need to file, open, and then you are going to select, insert, and then input your variables, and then try to click the frequency or syntax and will paste it accordingly, and you get the data. Using the SQL is quite simple. Basically, you can run the statistical analysis using a few commands like this. We are going to perform the count. We are going to perform the average rounding of the data, because average household income and also other relevant materials or indices is actually in the decimal point, and then followed by the maximum and also minimum. Based on this code, you can just copy it and then followed by pasting it, paste it into your SQL query. Okay, after you paste it, then you can click go lah. After you click go, you can see there is the analysis with regard to it. But before that, let me just give you the recap again of what we performed just now. Sorry, suddenly I intended to click go as fast as possible. Sorry. Okay, so let me recap a little bit. So we perform select, and then this is actually the DML, data manipulation language. So we are trying to perform some sort of language query to perform statistical analysis. We perform count on the state code as the PK. PK is the primary key. Based on the total state analyzed, and then we perform numbers of analysis, namely as average, as national average income. As meaning we give a new name. This is the naming of the new variables or outcome that we want the SQL giving it to us. For example, we want to perform average of the household income, but we want it to become rounded, meaning no decimal point. And we are going to make sure that it is being named as national average income. And then this is the maximum unemployment rate as the highest unemployment and then lowest unemployment from where? From our DOSM state data. So this is the simplest example that possibly will be asked in your final exam. Possibly, why I say possibly? Because will be something like this lah, that you need to understand the simple query to help you analyze the data or question given to you by the stimulus lah in your final exam. So this is the example. Total state analyzed will be as follows: 6, because we count it as 6, right? National income average is actually the average that being round up, because this is in a decimal point, but we try to make it round format. And then recording the highest unemployment and also lowest unemployment. So this is the example of statistical query. All right, I give you another example, which is the volatility and risk. So this is where we try to find out the two important component or matrices. We call it as central and also deviation. Okay, I'm going to continue the explanation. So this is the example of how we analyze the data based on the national average and so on and so forth. Okay, before I move, let me just recap. We in the statistical analysis or any descriptive statistics, we perform these two important things. The first one, we call it as a MCT, measurement of central tendencies. Is actually composite of mean, mode, median, and also we call it as a sum. This is all we call it as MCT. And then we have another one, we call it as a MD. MD is a measurement of dispersion. This one is very important, especially if you perform any numerical data analysis in your statistical descriptive descriptive statistics. Okay, I already copy this code for the volatility and risk. Why we name it as volatility and risk? Because the risk that we are going to estimate here is absolutely from the variance. As you know, the variance is being calculated based on the formula as follows, right? The sum and the square root of the sum x bar minus x divided by the n minus 1, the power of 2, right? So that one is actually the variance. And the standard deviations is the square root of it. So let us perform this kind of analysis. We go into the databases followed by the SQL syntax over there, and then we are going to click OK. So before we click OK, just to give you some ideas, so we perform this query select round what we want the computer system to round up the average household income and name it as the income underscore variance, followed by the another one average household income based on the standard deviation, because this one is STDDF is the standard deviation, followed by the another one variance. After you click go, and automatically the analysis are going to be performed, and this is the outcome from the overall data that we analyzed just now. And please bear in mind that the standard deviation is plus minus, because this is a plus minus minus 3000 or positive 3000, meaning this is the basic threshold that we are going to look into in our data set if we are going to perform some prediction, estimation, or we call it as a forecast. So that is the most important part in MD and MCT. Baik. Now, let us go into much more important ideas when we perform the analytics capstones. I think this one is more on the market penetrations, where you can also perform this analysis, where we can select the state, yearly revenue, population in million, and we are going to get the ideas. So you can copy it and also try accordingly. I may not able to cover all the 6A component under the phase 1 to 3. Phase 1 2. Perhaps you can try it by your own after this. Before I begin the step number 7, please allow me to also explain about the 6B later on. Okay, this one is very simple. Just go and click the SQL over there. And when you click go over there, you can get the ideas with regard to this explanation, where we calculating the market penetration cross databases by using the join and math. Why we perform joining? Because we want to join the postcode as compared to the D code. P and also D is actually represent the state name, and then the another one is actually your population and also your revenue per citizen. This one is quite technical to explain, but generally speaking, this one is when you want to calculate something with regard to your databases. Same also goes to the 6A on the phase 2. Okay, now let me give you the analytical engine for the 6B, because the 6B are going to be your not assignment but more on the homework. Okay, so first and foremost, let us go back to our main databases. Okay, inside our award space over here, ladies and gentlemen, you can click the hosting tools followed by the domain manager. Okay, I made a repetition. This is your 6B for your homework. So you must understand this configuration, because we no longer only play around with the SQL only. We also play around with the domain and also another language, we call it as a PHP. and also perhaps another language will be HTML. I make a repetition. You possibly need to learn under the 6B for your homework these three important language: SQL, as you know about the databases. Second, the DB connector, which is we call it as a PHP. And then the last but not least is the HTML. All right, without further delay, let me explain to you about the 6B journey. So the 6B, basically, you are trying to simulate the Pine Valley furniture that you try to build up using the open weather map data that you fetched before. So we are going to perform pipeline where we are going to fetch the data from the API weather map and insert it into our MySQL. Yeah. So the way to perform all that is basically you create the table first. So this is the example. You copy this one and then you create the table inside your databases. That is the factual ideas based on the previous explanation. Yeah. Okay, now the technicality a little bit tricky here when you perform the next execution or the next journey. And remember, our first table here, create table, namely as a table live underscore weather, we perform a very interesting component. We call it as the date time default current timestamp. So this current timestamp is the syntax enable our database to record the data automatically when the moment you start to fetch the data into your database. Yeah, that is the uniqueness about the SQL. They have their internal clock to record all this information. So after that, after you perform the table creation, you can proceed with the PHP. But of course, you need to understand what is the step here, Dr. Shazwan. So let me help you the journey. First and foremost, usually I will teach you to go to the MySQL database. This is your primary journey for our 642 database management course, where you click this button, and when you click this plus icon, you click also the information, you get all the details regarding this information: hosting name, port number, database name, and also your password. As I mentioned to you in the beginning of our journey, make sure that you record all of the information. If you fail to do that, I may encourage you to perform the password creation, the new password creation, because this one is very important for you to set up in our linkable journey. I make a repetition. When you go into the hosting followed by the MySQL databases, you will have your database, and you click the phpMyAdmin, enable you to open up the tools, which is phpMyAdmin, to configure and perform some syntax query to run your database. In your workspaces also, inside your database host, which is under MySQL database, you have this plus button. This plus button is enable you to know about the server information. So this is your server information. This is the name of the database host, followed by the port number, followed by the name of the database, and then followed by the password. So you have to know your password lah. If you can't remember it, then go into the password component over here and write it accordingly. Yeah. All right. So why I emphasize on this plus icon and information, because all these details will be needed, especially to create the connection. I repeat, to create the connections that allow only an authority to enter the data. Otherwise, all the people outside the world can go and flooded the information in your databases, making it inefficient and also spam it. So we are going to control that journey. Therefore, make sure that your password is protected. All right, that one finish. So far so good, can follow. Now, the journey begin for the second step will be as follows. You go into the hosting tools. We are going to navigate our cursor into the domain manager. So click on that domain manager. After you click on that domain manager, ladies and gentlemen, you are going to be prompted something like this. Inside the domain manager, you do not have domain. Therefore, you need to create a free subdomain over here. So just click create a free subdomain and enter your favorite subdomain. Let's say I'm going to say Imran for the example lah. My son named Imran, right? And then you can choose whatever name that you love to write upon it. So you have several subdomain available for you to leverage for these examples. Let's say I'm going to use the sportsontheweb.net and I'm going to click create. After you perform this action, automatically what will happen, the subdomain are going to be created for you. So this is the example of my subdomain. This is the example of my subdomain. If I click the plus icon over here, it's going to give me some information with regard to the PHP, DNS, and all the things relevant to my subdomain. So when you go into my 6B tutorial, you are going to have this icon. Go to workspace, file manager, your name, and also create a new file. So you need to create this new file, weather_pipeline.php. So where you want to write those code, you need to open up the files over here in the directory. So when you click this open directory, it will be looks like similar like your computer system, where you have your folders, and inside your folders you have relevant information. So indirectly, I give you already the idea about my configuration. So what is the meaning inside the instructions? You need to create this weather map. So to create the weather map, you have to follow this one. Create a new file name as follows. So just copy this icon and then followed by this creation. After you click create, then you have to choose this radio button, create file. What kind of file? Weather_pipeline.php. And then you can click create, and then you can click paste of the, you can open it up. After you open it, then you can paste, and then you can save. But before you save, make sure that you change the database credential, which is your host name, your username, your password, and also your DB name. So where to get all this information? In the previous examples. So I'm not going to save this icon. I'm just going to close it, and I'm going to delete it. Because this is the example only. And if you perform all this correctly, therefore you are going to have the ability to fetch the data. However, there will be some challenges with regard to this journey. I encourage you to explore about it. How? Okay, I give you hint. You can copy this code, and then you can copy also this code, and then prompt it inside the AI, and AI will help you to generate the index over here. So just giving you some example, like if I click this index, so this is the idea how it's going to be performed. So the initial setup of the 6B is not 100% complete and workable, but you have to tweak around just to give you some moment to explore lah, basically, ladies and gentlemen. So later on, you are going to submit the link associated to your fetching of the data using this approach. If you can perform that, then you get marks lah. If you cannot perform, then you ask AI, and then AI will help you. Then you got marks also. Okay, that is for the 6B. So finish about the 6A and 6B. So allow me to begin our class for the lesson number 7. So lesson number 6 and 7 is more on the practicality approach to make you, to enable yourself as the MBA graduate in the future, business owner or CEO of the company, to appreciate the application, lesson number 7, and also to appreciate the case study related to the function and the use of the SQL databases. Today we are going to perform the lesson number 7. So please allow me to share the screen, and then I also prepare some exercises that all of you can look into it, which is in this format. Okay, so this is the exercise for lesson number 7. If you go to the 642 over here, you can see I have dedicatedly give you the A, B, C, D1. So you can try to perform all this self-learn later on lah. If we got time, we can explore it together, but it's very simple one, except for the lesson 7D is actually a complete exercise to help you create the databases regarding the questionnaire. This one is quite interesting, ladies and gentlemen, because it's going to help you to create a questionnaire. So this one, I'm going to give it as the homework lah. So you got the first homework on the app sheet. The second homework is the 6B, and then this is the third homework. So all this homework is going to enhance your understanding how to implement the database connections and apply it accordingly. Because later on, you are going to perform and create your own business analytics tools and journey. Whether it's a group based or individual. This one is individual. As simple as you create a questionnaire. So for 7D, is actually a questionnaire. I give you an example. So this is the example of my questionnaire. You can also insert it accordingly lah, if you want to try. Sorry, not this one. This one is my IoT device. Just to give you some idea, I create an IoT device and all the data are going to be fetched into my databases and going to be visualized like this. If you want to learn more about this journey, so you can follow me through later on another subject. On another course lah. So if you go and visit into this link, survey.html, we have this human response survey. So this human response survey enable you to click yes and no, and later on you can click update. After you click the update, the data is going to be sent somewhere. Where is that somewhere? It is actually inside my SQL databases. Okay, just to give you some idea. You are going to perform the similar thing, but your question is a little bit different. You have 10 questions over here, and then you have also the configurations of the box, which is basically a questions that need to be answered. And then you have the button to press, basically. So try to explore and give it to me the link. So the link will be like the previous one, which is my link over here. So this is my link for the 6B, and then the new link, I'm not going to share with you the idea, but I give you the steps already. Hope you can explore it. Okay. All right. So the lesson number 7 begin. So we are going to learn a little bit about the client or server and also the internet databases. So why it is important for you to understand about the client, server, and also database? Because this is how the computer system are going to be communicated from one to another. We are not communicating from one radio frequency to another radio frequency. In a computer system, usually we are communicating through router, and all these things are going to be connected with some, we call it as a signal, not signal generator, but more on transforming the information into one format to another format. That's differentiate between the way that we transcode item or communicate through phone and through internet connections, because we need to have the server requirement and also we need to have the databases. So this is the evolutions of the computing. We have the centralized mainframe, we have also the decentralized PC, and then we have the client or server models. So to take the example of the centralized mainframe will be, we have the every data are going to be inserted or communicated into one server. That server will be parked in your company, for example, and all the data are going to be stored there. So you cannot access it from outside. If you want to access it from outside, you need to fetch the internet to communicate with that centralized mainframe. That one is actually under the client server models. So the decentralized is actually allow you to perform analytical engine analysis and so on and so forth, not on the clouds, but more on the decentralized approach, meaning locally. So this is the evolutions of computing, just to give you some idea. So understanding the client experience, using the mobile apps, using the web app, using the GUI, graphical user interface, all these mechanics is actually the method for you to retrieve information from your client or from your customers. And in my journey towards the IoT application, we use a lot of sensor technology to detect the customer behavior, to perform actions related to their movement, and also how the data is behaved based on certain proxy. All that things will be talking under the client experience. So to perform all these things seamlessly, we need to have the database. Before I go even even deeper, let me just give you the idea lah. Inside the real case scenario, I have this semi-dedicated server, just to give you the example over here. So based on this semi-dedicated server, I already have the file manager, and inside this file manager, this one is actually same like your award spaces, but the difference is this one is paid now. That award spaces is free, right? So if I'm going to navigate my icon over here, public HTML, and navigate it through my Meranti folder. So this Meranti folder is already being configured as a subdomain, same like what we learned before. And inside this folder, you are going to see several files is already being inserted there. So that file will represent the way that the information is being communicated from one angle to another angle. Yeah. Okay, let me just recap the idea. Go into your public HTML over here. And then if I open up the Meranti, okay, we got here PHP, we got the index HTML, and so on and so forth. Yeah. All these things is the scripting or language, scripting language that enable you to communicate with something at the back end. This is more on the front end. For example, the index HTML is your front end, but you have the back end engine that actually connect to your data. To understand that one, of course, we need to go for the PHP-MyAdmin. The PHP-MyAdmin is what? It's a tools. It's a tools for you to store your data. If I navigate into one databases here, named as USM tag underscore DML digital, you can see over here, it's actually similar like what you have in your workspaces, right? But now I have two important tables. The first one, telemetry, and then the second one will be the survey log. If I click this survey log over here, you can see that there is some data regarding it. Yeah? Okay, I would like to encourage you to try enter this link now and see the action. Yeah, I give you the link on the chat so that you can try your own lah. This way, we can also learn about spamming lah basically. Yeah. ranti.usmtech.my/survey.html. So this is my personal link that enable you to enter information regarding the symptoms. Example lah. Okay, I would like to encourage you to go and try to just try to enter it, and then we see what happened inside the database. Because this is the topic number 7, it's going to explain more on the applications, right? So please go there and click. Can you do that or cannot? If you already insert it, thumbs up. Otherwise, thumbs double up. Okay, you done it. Okay, if I double click on it, okay, you can see over here, I got the information already inserted by our colleague over there. But I'm not so sure who is she or who is he, but it's okay. Just to give you some ideas, if you click yes and no on this particular link, all the data that you click is actually being stored here. Let me just refresh the database. Yeah, it's actually increasing and so on and so forth. So this kind of action, it's nearly live if I fetch the data here into the format of dashboard. But of course, because this is not the dashboard, it is only a storage. And whatever that you saw just now, it's already there, but I need to refresh it due to the GUI perspective. Okay, thank you for all of your cooperations for trying to play around with this link. So this is also your journey towards the activity 7D1, because you are going to create the questionnaire later on. Will similar like this. All right. So that is the journey, ladies and gentlemen. So to understand the client experience, you need to have the browser, the link, the UI, the anything that can capture the customer data. So in my example just now, I capture the information regarding the symptoms if you are working in my workspaces. Example lah. So that is the application. Yeah. So to understand the server, you need to understand also the server is actually a machine or a computer but has been configured in such a way to communicate and to link your information from one client to another client. So that is the basic server roles. The server is acts as the data provider, ensuring and managing complex calculations and also concurrently access to multiple users. Yeah? This one is also involved the SQL, AWS, and enabling the reliable data management. So this is the example of the server room lah. When you get a lot of server inside a room, this is where we also define it as a data center, DC. So we have approximately a few type of DC. If I'm not mistaken, a few classes. Data center. Data center. So we have examples of data center. Data center also already being defined by numbers of classes. Data center class. Data center class. So we have type 1 until further highly rigid tier. Not type lah, sorry, tier. So we have the tier 1 basic capacity, and then we have the tier 2, we have the tier 3, and also tier 4. Okay, if you look into this tier 4, the tier 4 is the fault tolerant is basically 99.99995%, which is the annual downtime is 26.3 minutes, meaning if your server cannot work, it's only allow not able to work for approximately less than 26 minutes, meaning most of the 1 year operations is never fail. That one is the example of the tier 4 fault tolerant. That's been we have I think the tier 4 it's quite hard to find it in Malaysia. Okay, we have this kind of configurations lah for the redundancy and so on. I have experience attending the data center course, but it's actually for the data engineers lah. It's basically not suitable to your basic understanding lah. But as you know, we need the client and server. What is a server? It's actually a room or a technology equipment that functions to communicate from one computer system to another computer system. Yeah, that is a server. Okay, so let us have a look into the analogy. We have the restaurant analogy for efficiency. Yeah, this is a very interesting stories to help you understand the journey of the client and also server. Okay, the two-tier architecture. So what is the meaning of the two-tier architecture, ladies and gentlemen? The two-tier architecture is actually a direct connections, meaning the computer system are able to communicate from one another with the additional speeds, but can be directed. So this is the two-tier architecture. And then we have also, the two-tier architecture. Okay, we have also the three-tier architecture. The three-tier architecture, ladies and gentlemen, is enhanced system efficiency by separating the client, application, and server database, enabling the scalable solution. This is the example of the Grab, Shopee, and also the major digital organization business and Apple in our country nowadays. And how they perform this kind of three-tier because they have the multiple application. They have the server, they have the database, and also they have the client that are being configured in a separate manner, whereby the two tiers is more on the direct connection, but it is not able to be scalable. Scalable means you cannot use it for the third party. I mean, more than other kind of people. I took an example. Let's say I'm creating a online platform. If I'm creating it as a Grab, you can become a Grab driver. You can also become a Grab customer. So that customer and also that driver is actually a different personas, and all these personas are in different configuration. That one we call it as the tier lah, because we have the multiple connection with regard to the database layer and so on. However, when you go into the two-tier, it's more on direct connection from one to one. It's basically like when you communicate from one patient to your customer or client. It is a one-to-one basis. The one is two tiers, yeah. And then we have the internet databases, ladies and gentlemen. we have these two important protocol. We call it as HTTP and also HTTPS. So the difference is the S symbols here is actually secure. Allow the data to be reached or to be sent or to be navigated through anywhere around the world with regard to the independence of the location. So this is called the flexibility of the internet databases. However, you must also remember and understand some of the system is already being configured in a such a way that you can't access it outside the IP of that particular region. Example, if you try to access Maybank to you from outside the country or outside the world, possibly that you will not able to do that. Why? Because they lock the IP for specific countries only. When you cross boundaries, you have to use the another kind of way to go about it. It's either using the international bank or their international account. So that is the example how the internet base is actually work. Yeah. So comparing the thin and fat client. So let me give you an idea about the thin client and also fat client. Yeah. Thin client, ladies and gentlemen, is the browser required minimal local processing power. So the thin client usually involved in a very, very lightweight of interfaces. This one can be performed using a simple, non-complex algorithm, not algorithm lah, but we say GUI, graphical user interface, that retrieve the informations directly from the client and then send it into the databases. This one is called thin clients. And then we have the fat clients where we need to install the software that demand the significant local resources. So the fat client or thin client is depend on the system architectures that you created. If you create the web app, usually the web app will run majority of the time and the computational element will be stored in your databases. That one, we call it as a thin client because all of the interfaces will be run in the superficial manner, but the back end perform the very high intensive computation. That one is on the cloud. The fat client on the others configuration is where you have to also install some configuration locally to make it workable in your operating system. So that's one is called fat client. And then we have also the middleware. As you know, when you learn in the IoT, you also learn about the concept of middleware and also not malware. Malware is different. That one is the attacks that are being performed by bots, making the system to become redundant and make it inefficient. What is the malware function? Is basically attacking your server or your databases and flooded it with the inappropriate information. So by doing that, they can basically or theoretically jam your efficiency in your databases. On the other hand, the middleware is actually being defined as the bridge between the user and interfaces with the communication protocol. So the common language for the middleware will be the Python, PHP, Java. All these things is the middleware languages that enable you to communicate from one end to the back end. I mean, front end to the back end. Example of the middleware will be as follows. Yeah. Let me just give you an idea that what you perform just now is the survey, right? You perform the survey entering like this. So let me just refresh. Okay, there are approximately more than, I mean, at least 10 of you already click my link and enter it accordingly. And all these things is actually performed at this configuration. So this is called middleware. If I open this button and click the edit over here, and you are going to see the edit view, you can see we have the configurations that catch the data from phone. So you can see I have the JSON. This one is a PHP format. And then the task is actually update and waiting room for the high-speed ESP32. This is the example of my system. And then this is a SQL database. This is the permanent recording and keeping. And then insert the raw survey data into the log table, general, mucosal, dermal, and also others. Where they put all this, they put it inside the databases that we mentioned just now. How it is enable us to do so? Because we give the we give the clearance here. This is the technical clearance where we give the local host name, their configurations in terms of the hosting, username and password. Okay, and then they will perform some sort of logic lah. So all these things is called middleware, ladies and gentlemen. And all this middleware need to be communicated in front of the persons using certain element. Therefore, we need is another middleware. We call it as the HTML. So this is the HTML, which help you to translate the complex GUI into simplified GUI, so that you can easily record your survey, right? So all this black color, this kind of configuration, when you click, it's changed. Yeah, score. You see, when I click everything yes, the score over here are going to be updated. All this configuration is being made available by the use of middleware, named as what? HTML. So if you look back into my example here, we have the survey.html, which is your front end. We have the middle end that process everything under survey save underscore survey. And then we have another middleware, which is we call it as the survey underscore JSON. Okay, this one is different lah, but just to give you the idea, the complexity of the data can be until this kind of extent, where we perform the JSON pair of the data to transport here to there, because I'm using the edge device, ESP32 microcontroller and so on and so forth. So all these things enable me to do so. Okay, when you go into my configuration here, is also the same. We have the HTML, we have the PHP that fetch the data into the databases and visualize all this. And then, ladies and gentlemen, we also have the download function over here. By clicking this download, it is actually enable you to download the CSV file. So the question will be how I can download this data, because I have the middleware here. We name it as export.php. So this export.php is the middleware that help you in the formatting of the language to get the data accordingly. Okay. I did not bring my IoT devices on this table, but just to give you the idea, later on if we have time, please remind me so that I can give you the simulation, how the data are going to be fetched in the real time. Yeah. Okay, the web request cycle. So it starts from the URL. When you start to click the meranti.usmtech.my/survey.html, actually you are performing the URL typing. And then after that, it's reached the server address for the desired resources, which is you are actually visiting into my resource here under the meranti.usmtech that are already being positioned in the index.html, meaning it will be redirect towards it. Yeah. And then you perform the HTTP request, the browser sends the HTTP, and then it is very crucial because the data is going to be transmitted. So you can imagine, ladies and gentlemen, all these things previously will took around several seconds, but nowadays it's actually instantaneously. You see, when I click this enter, automatically all the things happen at the back. I would say instantaneously. So you can also imagine if I also go into my dashboard IoT here, any data that fetch from the IoT device automatically can be displayed here simultaneously, meaning the data not only being captured by the edge, stored into your databases, automatically visualize it on your dashboard. So that is how fast the data nowadays with our bandwidth work. Okay? Same also with regard to this example. Like if I click this download all databases, instantaneously the data allows you to download all the databases, I mean the CSV files. So this CSV file can be up to megabyte, maybe millions, not millions, I would say 100,000s of rows can be stored inside your databases. Yeah, you can try to look into it later on. So this is the example of the data that are already being samples and recorded into our databases. Yeah. Okay. So we have the middleware that help to process and translate it in the SQL function in a very robust setup. So let me just give you another idea. Because we want to perform the data to be displayed, right? So let me give you the safe survey suggestion data. Okay. Let me just open this one to give you an idea what happened to the data just now. So the data that is going to fetch based on the SQL, and then this is all the SQL language lah, basically. Select, if you remember, in our award spaces, we use this kind of language, right? But we need to note here lah. $sign SQL is equal to select where, from where, select from telemetry order by ID, descending it by limit tens, variable 1 order by ID ACS. So all this thing is the configuration to go back into our databases, ladies and gentlemen, over here under the telemetry and perform the order list, meaning make sure that this one is telemetry, sorry. Telemetry meaning telemetry database. Yeah. So I have two database here. So it is actually go and refer to my telemetry, perform the sorting, and make sure we present the limits by 10, meaning display the telemetry by 10 in terms of DES is the descending basically, ladies and gentlemen, order by ACS. So all these things is actually your SQL command that you ask the computer system to perform it by fetching the data and display it accordingly. So that is how we communicate the data from the URL into HTTP request to the middleware. Okay, cloud databases, scalable and flexible solution. Okay, this one, if you want to know what I meant by the cloud software, you can go into the Jamovi, Jamovi Cloud. So this is the example of the cloud computing or the cloud technology. You can actually use this software. We call it as a Jamovi statistical software. It looks like the SPSS, but it is not SPSS. It is being written by the R language. If you click the start button, of course, they will go to the cloud.jamovi.org, meaning you can run the analysis not locally via the internet basis. So you can imagine you did not install anything for the software applications, but you want to run the analysis. Therefore, you have the data in CSV format. Nowadays, you can perform that journey without needing to install this software. So you have the options. Basically, you can download the apps and install it accordingly, or you run in the cloud. So this is called cloud databases. Cloud computing. And the cloud computing also related to the cloud databases, where you are enabling yourself to be much more scalable and flexible in the solution. For example, AWS, Azure, Google Clouds, because it is represent the capital expenditure into much more operational expenditure. So it is actually helping you to scalable your solutions nicely. So despite of having the semi-dedicated server like myself, it is very important to also consider if I can just purchase something on my Google console. If I go and go for Google console, they also have the SQL databases, which is in the format named as the BigQuery. So I also can perform this one. No need to purchase or no need to rent this kind of server. However, to perform this connectability and also the cloud configurations in the Google, you need to have some certifications and you need to have some deep technical understanding about how to go around all this technology. But nowadays, it's actually affordable for you to explore on. Okay, and then the scalability strategy. Scalability strategy means this is my example of the Meranti dashboard. So this is for one client. So I can create multiple client, and all these multiple client can be created with the different front end. Maybe I have the username and password that need to be entered first before they can log in into the system and only view their own dashboard. So that is where the scalable element is going to take into places. Yeah? That's why we call it as a scalability strategy. Yeah? We have the vertical scaling. Vertical scaling means we are going to upgrading it into a single server, which is more resource and RAM, or horizontal scaling, which is much more resilient, higher performance when the high traffic spike happen. All these things can be adjusted automatically in our cloud computer nowadays. You no need to purchase a stagnant semi-dedicated server or server that run at the back in somewhere in your house, and for example, but you can have the flexible solution, meaning when there is high traffic, automatically the configurations are going to be made to adapt those high traffic surge. So that is the scalability ideas. Yeah. And then we have the data governance challenges, ownership, sovereignty, and also residency issue. Okay, this is quite interesting to discuss because some of the data that we have in our national databases and informations are going to be host or belongs to certain organizations. So in Malaysian context, we did have agreement to big giant like AWS or Google or anything with regard to it regarding the data that host or kept in their databases or in their technology, So this is called ownership. Sovereignty is more on how well our data is being protected, especially kedaulatan, basically. Sovereignty is kedaulatan. How it's you protect your ownership of the data lah, is not being exploited by the other parties of the world. Same also with regard to the residency. So this is need to be understand because one of the component under the DBM database management is you need to ensure that any sensitive data under PDPA is being protected, especially medical ethics related data, and then the data related to our strategic defense. All these things cannot be shared or cannot be utilizing any external parties. Otherwise, our system is easily to be manipulated by others. Okay, protecting data in the transit with encryption. So this is the SSL and TLS. TLS and also SSL is the encryption and decryption format created by the computer system to enable you to transfer the data from here to America, for example, so that there is no unauthorized personnel can intervene your communication when it is being transported from here to the outsiders around the world. So that is how the encryptions work. So we also need to understand about the APIs, ladies and gentlemen. What is the API? API is a digital contract of the data exchange. Example of this API, I already explained to you in the very beginning of our class during our API use of the Open Weather Map. If you look back on our API class on Open Weather Map, you will understand about this journey. And then we have the Open Weather Map case study. This one, I think majority of you know already. Okay, JSON. JSON is actually a data structure. The data structure of the JSON can be performed and extract according to the format that we need. So you can write here the JSON format. Usually, when I try to send the data into the server, I'm going to use, we call it as a Postman. Postman is an app that enable you to send the data to your cloud services lah. Postman app. Oh, I already, okay, I already removed it. Or I already uninstalled it. So this is JSON format. JSON format. So JSON format is the lightest format possible created. It is actually a formatting lah. It is a formattings that enable you to put object, string information so that you can communicate the data wirelessly in a very efficient manner with high load of information. So this is the example of how the JSON work. You can read more about it. It is more on the simplicity basis. JSON stands for JavaScript Object Notation. It's a lightweight interchange of format. Usually JSON will be used in IAQ telemetry. Meaning if I want to send the data from here to my cloud for IoT purposes, that record the data approximately a few seconds, one data locked into the database, the JSON format will help me to do that. And in modern application, JSON is crucial for API, allowing for efficiency and real-time communication. Meaning, when you purchase some token, that token it's enable for you to do some sort of query, and that query will translate into the JSON format. If you remember, during our Google App Script class, using the what is that? Using the open weather map, we use this JSON format for the journey. Okay, so let me just write something on my open weather. Okay, the internet is no longer support me. Okay, so this is the example of my Google Sheet. So if you look into this example, I have the open weather, and if I go for extension and also look into the app script, you can see the app script. And when you perform the fetch of the data, what will happen? Basically, they will collect the data and then later on translate it into the JSON format. So that is the basic idea. Sir. So the data that being fetched into the JSON format are going to be reinserted into the format that you want. This one is the example when you perform the JSON. Okay, this one JSON parse. So we use the JSON method to fetch the data from the open weather map. So simply like this, you can also try to use it. Make sure that you have the API key. JSON for open weather map. This one you can try your own. Just go for the AI models just to see how to call upon. Okay, this is the example. I need the code. I need the JSON query in URL format using terminal Mac. Example. So they will give some format, and then you need to write the format accordingly. So this is the example, CTNet and API key. So I can basically use this code and perform it into my terminal basically. So let's say I have this information and I can insert my city name. Let's say my city name will be Sungai Buloh. Sungai Buloh. And then my API keys. So let me just try whether this API key still work or not. Just to put it here. And then you can copy this curl into your terminal. Example. And then you can try to click enter. URL format function. Okay. That one. So this is the example of my. This is the yesterday example. But for this particular example, let me remove. This one. Okay, this is how you want to create the query basically. Okay, let me rerun again. Hopefully my okay, this one is not working. Never mind, I have the example of the yesterday content. So this is the example. I have the command here, curl expose meranti api.hp content application JSON. So I actually create the JSON object, and this JSON object are going to be sent to my cloud. Example status insert. So all these things is already inserted into my website. So this is the example of the JSON. Okay, next. Automating data extraction with the PHP. I think I already give you the example of how I extract the data from the ETL format using the database and also the PHP mechanics from my examples of the Meranti case. I hope that you can also identify that one. So this is the example of Kelvin to Celsius conversion. The conversions of the temperature to Kelvin is crucial in scientific setting, allowing the easier interpretations of the applications of the temperature in the various contexts, right? So this is the example of the data pipeline. So you have this pipeline. This is the example how you want to create the system logic. you have the gated here in the diamond format and also the square. Okay. Now understand the importance of timestamp. I think all of you can see the definite ideas based on this configuration, where our date, sorry, not this one, but more on my files over here. Okay, I have the current stamp that automatically, this one, when contact. This is the time of the timestamp. This is from the telemetry. All this thing is actually having the timestamp. And this timestamp is very important for you because of the forensic lah, basically. So we have the date time column. Organized can track the data point occurs or the data point being recorded. And it is actually have the ability to analyze, to synthesize it according to the time, date. We can make it proportionate, or we can separate or segregate it according to our way of communicating the language. And we are also going to use this one for the high dimensions, like the pattern and sales and so on and so forth. I think maybe your 7D, if possible, you can create it and then you can share your link according to your own preference, and then you can start to enter the details. Later on, we can try to analyze it and also see the trend. Maybe you can send the data to your other friends that not enroll in the subjects and then see how the response will be. Later on, you try to do it 7D. 7D is the homework, the third homework. Okay. So let us continue into the business journey, because we need to have the automation, efficiency, and scalability. If you learn about automation, the automation is the example of my Meranti case just now, where I already give you the dashboard, and this dashboard is actually going to be plugged in with my IoT device, where they record the temperature, humidity, TBOC, formaldehyde, CO2, particulate, and so on and so forth, and give the risk. Okay. If you see over here, interestingly, before this, the general risk is actually 0, but now it's become 1. Why? Because the intelligence processes inside this journey will record automatically what happened in a period of time. You know, inside this dashboard, they have the algorithm that run at the back end, visualizing what happened in your reporting. So if the general risk is 1, meaning the system is not open, there is no risk or low risk. So we have the continuous business operation, automation, efficiency, and also scalability. So the 3 component here is important in the database management. So how we want to optimize and also execute the decision making? By grouping by its dates, basically, to make sure that the condensing of the daily data points, simplifying analysis, and also enhancing reporting. So all these things, we are going to discover the journey later on using the local studio. We are going to use this local studio as the BI, or business intelligence, where we are going to fetch the data from the SQL, and then later on, we are going to manipulate the data and time. So make sure that you try to have a look into the data studio, but giving you some insight giving you some insight. You can go into the local studio, LOOKER, localstudio.google.com. Or previously they named as local studio. Now they name it back as a data studio. So let us see their blogs. Suddenly it's being changed. Data studio return as a new home for data cloud asset. Oh my God. Before this, they name it as a data studio, and then they change it to the local studio. And today, they change it into the data studio back. Whatever it is But this is the idea, ladies and gentlemen. So we are going to create a report later on, and before we can create our report nicely, we are going to configure it. So to configure the report, we are going to have the connector. That connector will be talked later in our subject of analytics. Okay, so this is the information. And then the digestible summaries. So in our database or in our dashboard, we are going to perform the summaries for the informed decision-making process. That is the interesting and important component in the journey part of our analysis. Merging data, as you know, we can merge the data of the table and also production, and allow us to see the impact on the productivity, and also to see the impact on one component to another component. This is can be cause and effect relationship, or we call it as a causal relationship This one is ultimately important, especially if your productions or your business activities is correlated with the weather forecast lah. So that is what I meant by this slides. Okay, let us into the statistical analysis. So as you know, the statistical analysis allows you not only to measure the basic counting, average, minimum, maximum, something like that. This also allows you to perform the statistical SQL function like average, maximum, minimum values of all the data sets that you are going to be collected. But you must remember the advanced analysis of all this possibly have the limitation in our SQL. Therefore, we have the multiple use of the other files or other journey in terms of interacting with the modern machine learning architecture. I took an example. Let's say you want to perform machine learning algorithm. Maybe machine learning algorithm cannot be performed directly to the SQL, but you can have the SQL to fetch the data. The data are going to be analyzed in the Python format. That Python are going to be visualized into your Flask. Flask is the framework lah, basically, on the web-based component to share to the GUI basis of the client with regard to the business output of the certain prediction. That is the complex explanation. In a nutshell, when we say the SQL function based on the statistical analysis, it is also can be embedded or performed directly, but you can also perform much more advanced later on. So that is the main idea about this. Okay, the view of the dashboard supplying the data for the executive. If you remember, one of the important syntax that we write before is view, insert view. If you remember lah, the 6A, we learned about the 6 view. So the view is actually helping you to create a new view, and this kind of view is new data that being reorganized by performing a certain classification, grouping, analysis to help you summarize the data. So that is the main important journey under the view format here, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, and then we have the annual losses due to the SQL reveal 7,000, where annual losses due to increased humidity, emphasizing the investing in dehumidifiers. So this is the example what will happen in your data center. In your data center, usually is control environment. So in your data center, there will be control not only in the security manner, but also on the thermal comfort or environmental manner. So I have a few slides. Okay, this is the real success stories. How company leverage their client server databases. Company like Grab, Shopee, Hospital, and so on and so forth is thrive through the efficiency of data. Sometimes they don't own the data. No, I mean, I'm not saying they don't own the data. They own the data, but they do not have their own data center. They are actually leveraging whatever data centers available around the world. Example is AWS lah. AWS is already parked in Malaysia, and some of the big company already use the AWS to be leveraged not only as the cloud computing, but also helping in the journey for data query. So that is the real example for this particular idea. Okay, before we end the session, let me go for the quick overview of our exercise. Our exercise are going to be focused on the 7A, 7B, and 7C. So this exercise, you can do it your own, but I just give you at a glance what you are going to learn or self-learn by yourself. If you go and visit into week 7, which is today class, we are going to talk about the client and also server architecture. So I already made some sort of simplification here. You can just read it through. Why? Because until the end, until the 7D1, you are going to create a website. It look like my survey, but all the survey are going to be parked in your own database. Make sure that every one of you can collect at least 10 or 15 answers, whether you ask yourself or you can ask your friend for you. So that is the information for this 7D. data collection for business research. This is the example. So you are going to perform the Likert scale 1 to 5, allow you to perform the quantitative basic business research, calculate mean, standard deviation, and correlation. Okay, how you want to perform? You create database, and then you implement the scripting survey.php. How you want to perform all this? You go into your workspaces, followed by the domain manager. You create your own manager, your own subdomain, and then later on create the survey.php files and enter all the details accordingly. So that is your main journey for the 7B. Okay, so this is the notes basically. 7A is the notes. 7B also is the notes. Why? Because all these notes need to be answered later on in the 7B. So that is the story behind all this thing lah. So this is the part 2. You have to understand a little bit about the component, because later on the 7B, you are going to create a questionnaire that tests your understanding. So lesson number 7 not only allows you to visualize and understand the context of how the SQL databases is being applied through the real world, but also help you to understand how to create it by your own. Okay, so this is the 7C case study on the global supply chain. You can read about it. I already give you some lab activities, web to the DB journey. So this is the 7D1. And then the API logic is already been given in the 6B. So the 6B and also the 7D donkey is your finalization. Okay, I think majority of the important questions are already being explained in this class. And then we have one more. Yeah, I mean, in the summary, you all are from USM, and I hope that you can lead lah. You are ready to lead. That's why I put here, we are already to lead. Why? Because in USM, we focus on this spirit, we lead. USM must become a leader in everything. We lead everything by ensuring that all the things we understand. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, so these quiz are going to be made available soon. I'm going to adjust it for 40 minutes. If I'm not mistaken, at this particular moment, I adjust it, or I make it as, let me just double check. Okay, this one is 30 minutes. I will make it as 40 minutes. So 40 questions. Oh, okay, thank you, Shirley. Okay, who else that I forgot or I miss your attendance? Let me know. Serene. Okay, let me check your name. Serene. Serene, I already marked your attendance. Who else? Shirley. Yeah, Shirley just now. Okay, who else that possibly I miss your name for the attendance before we end the class? Anyone else? Okay, Lee Ziluan, Louis Chong, Mel Kettingen.
Here.
So, who is that?
Mel Kettingen.
Mel. Mel. Okay, thank you, Mel. Okay, who else? So, Yuha, Tan John Wen, Tan Joey. Nane? Okay, never mind. So, I am going to end up this class, but I just want to remind you about the following. The first one is your quiz. So I have a quiz here, will be made available I think on Wednesday, to be fair for the another group. So we shall start together on Wednesday. This one you can answer it on Thursday or Friday. It's very simple one. When you go inside, you can answer it everywhere except when you flew around using the aeroplane. You do not have the internet, you can't do that you can't do anything on that But theoretically speaking, it is very simple question. 40 question, 40 minutes. Straightforward. Second, I'm going to initiate also the submission for 2 exercises, or we call it as a 2 homework. The first homework is your 6B, the journey of the 6B. The 6B, you can configure it by yourself, you configure it. Otherwise, I will give you the hint by tomorrow or this week basically. And then the final homework will be your 7B. Okay, sorry, 7D, 7 donkey. So all these things is homework. When I say homework, it is individual. When I say quiz, is also individual. When I say project, it is more on the group manner. So all these things are going to carry around few marks lah, correspond to your personal continuous mark. If your continuous mark is not good, then we can try to reformat it again, or I will produce another test lah to improve your carry mark. That is my plan basically. But remember, the plan for carry mark still, I mean, not plan of the carry mark. The way that the JSP asks